Welcome back to Inside the Square, brought to you by freedomsquare.com, where you can customize your Freedom Square experience. Download the app, Google Play Store, Apple App Store. Want to see the news that you want to see inside of your dashboard? You can customize it. News, podcasts, resources, and we're building out America's Chamber of Freedom with Job Creators Network. If you own a business, make sure you register your business for free right now at freedomsquare.com. Inside the Square tonight with Wirepoints, Ted Dabrowski, and we've got a lot to talk about. Let's talk about equity, particularly here in Illinois. As I'm reading what I was sent, equity fail. Illinois blacks suffer nation's second highest unemployment rate, largest black-white gap. How is that possible with all the money, all the resources, everything being pushed into communities that need the help? How does that happen?
Yeah, I mean, when you think about Illinois and when you think about Chicago, is heavily progressive for a long time. Equity has become the word, from Lori Lightfoot, Governor Pritzker, now Brandon Johnson, and Tony Preckwinkle. It's all equity. And so you would think with all the dedication to equity and the progressive movement that we've had here, well, we should be the best for black population, right? If that's who they want to take care of, and that's who they say they take care of, and that's the vote they court, well, how are blacks doing in Chicago, and how are they doing in Illinois? And what's sad about all that is that, and let's be clear, equity means get rid of merit. Don't talk about achievement. Don't talk about accomplishment. Let's just say, let's talk about equity, whatever that means. It's a really hard word to define. And so, well, let's look at the data. So that's what we did. Again, this is one of those cases where we look at the data. First thing you see right off the bat is, well, blacks in Illinois have the second highest unemployment rate in the country.
How is that possible?
How is that possible? And then if you look at Florida or Tennessee or some of those states who are the purported bad guys, their unemployment rates are far, far lower than ours, much lower than ours for blacks. So blacks have more opportunity there. If you look at the black-white unemployment rate gap, right? Well, that should be pretty close in Illinois, right?
Correct.
Well, it's not. It's the widest gap in the country by far.
Once again, how is that possible?
And again, you look at the southern states, which are if you talk to the powers in Illinois, they discredit Florida and those states. And so then you say, well, okay, let's look at poverty gaps, right? So if you look at the black poverty gap versus the white poverty gap in Illinois, sixth highest in the country. And so I could go on and on. Chicago, highest unemployment rate for blacks in the country. So what the heck are they doing with all their efforts and energy on equity? It doesn't work.
I mean, where the resources being pumped in,
massive dollars being pumped in,
huge dollars, and we won't even push on the immigration crisis.
Well, yeah, that would be.
That's going to be a whole other hornet's nest to talk about, and it's going to affect everybody.
Right, which is why they're upset, because if things are so bad already, and now you're letting a whole bunch of other people who are very poor, don't have the education, don't have the jobs, what's going to happen? And so this for me is, if I were to wave a magic wand, that word equity would be gone. And we get back to merit, and we get back to competence, and we get back to accomplishment and excellence. And I'll tell you where this really shows up is on education. If you look at many schools, the union president for Chicago Public Schools, or Chicago Teachers Union.
You mean the one that doesn't like private schools, doesn't want school choice, but sends her kid to a school choice, right?
Stacey Davis Gates, exactly. Yeah, she said that school choice is racist. She calls private schools segregation academies, things like that. And that's okay. She can call them what she wants. But if you look at why she doesn't like them, it's because the school that she would have sent her son to, only 3 out of every 100 black children can read at grade level there.
Say that again. So you're looking at
only
3%.
3 out of 100. Yes, 3%.
Good grief.
Nobody can read there, and so we've gotten rid of literacy as an objective. And the problem, with merit, you're saying we want 100% of kids reading. With equity, well, you've almost achieved equity because nobody can read.
Right, they're on the basement.
It's the wrong equity, right? You're equity at the basement, not equity at the top. And so this is the sad part of what's happening with this whole equity agenda. And Mayor Johnson in Chicago has said that he wants to get rid of testing. So if we get rid of testing, then how do we know how our kids are doing? And I know there's a lot of issues with testing. I'm not dumb, but if you can't do a basic literacy test,
you can't measure it.
You can't measure it, and it's in math it's even worse. Our kids can't even do math, and so I have to say they've destroyed the public schools. this equity movement, this progressive movement, and we need a whole flip and say, let's embrace merit again. Let's embrace literacy again, because otherwise, how will these generations of kids, black, Hispanic, and many whites, how will they succeed?
How do you stop the car? How do you say, put it in park, we're going to reevaluate, and then we're going to go down this road? With the amount of power that the teachers' unions have, the political prowess of our governor overlooking and lurching into everything, how do you even back this up and rewind it, or you just have to blow it up and start all over again?
Yeah, well, Chuck, what's amazing is you can't, because the governor, when we brought this stuff up, and now remember, this is the government's own stats. This is what they publish on their site. It's Governor Pritzker has a State Department of Education that reports to him. When this came out and the Wall Street Journal covered our reporting on this, we wrote about Decatur public schools and then about the entire state. He came out and said that it wasn't true, that this data wasn't true, which was whatever you want to call it, a whopper. But this is the problem, is that there's denial, because the problem is they've gotten so deep into their equity agenda they can't back out of it. And what's so unfair about that is that the black kids can't read, and Latinos too. They're almost as bad in terms of reading levels. But I tell you, it's even gotten worse than that. In Decatur, for example, whites can't read anymore. There's only like 11% in the Decatur public schools that are white, but their reading levels are down at the bottom as well. So it's really sad.
So this touches all. It doesn't matter if you're black, white.
No, it's a destruction. The board. It's really, how do you build equity, but by going a race to the bottom. I
mean, is the end game just really to make everybody as dumb as possible and keep them on the government dole?
You know,
I hear that all the time, but that's where we're headed.
You know, the problem is there's such a defensive-ness about, and again, come back to my upbringing. My parents were immigrants. I can tell you what was the most important thing to them: me learning English.
Sure.
Like my dad said, he didn't mind that I learned Spanish, but damn it, I was going to learn English because this is America. So assimilation was key. Number two, obsessive about education. And, it's tough for me as a kid just growing up, but he was obsessed, my mom too. And they pushed like crazy. Why? Because that's your ticket to success. And why we're destroying that, the ordinary kids right now, their ticket to success to succeed in life. Yeah, so, you can come up with all kinds of conspiracy theories, but it's an absolute failure.
Does it begin and end at home with parenting? When it comes down to it, with being the true watchdog of really what's happening in the public schools, what's happening with their supposed tax dollars being spent, and with the gradings that are happening with their students. I mean, is that really where it comes down to roost with parents? Which we know how things go in those communities with moms with 5, 6 kids, no dad. She's working a job, maybe she's not. I don't know. I mean, it's just this cycle. How do you break the cycle?
Well, you got to change the message, and that's why I'm saying if I could get rid of the word equity, I would.
Sure.
And of course, we go back to the '60s and the Civil Rights Act, and the understanding of what that meant, but then a lot of the unintended consequences of what came. So talking about equity, this is fascinating. I had no idea about this until we started looking at unwed births. Nobody wants to talk about this. This is a taboo. It's racist to talk about.
Oh, it's racist, Ted.
Yeah, and I'm going to tell you why it's not racist in a second. So you look at places like Decatur, Illinois, Rockford, Illinois, Chicago. So Chicago, 8 out of every 10 births now is to an unwed mother. In Rockford, it's over 9 out of every 10. Wow. Same thing in Decatur. So we've lost our tradition of family. And rather than the government helping support that, they pass policies that lead to the disintegration of family. And a lot of this stuff that's going on, which is not part of the equity stuff, right? And the trans movement in lower grades,
sure.
The critical race theory in lower grades, the sex ed in second grade, all that stuff is destructive to family. And so here you go. This is why I said this is not racist. In Decatur, Illinois, 5 out of every 10 white births are to unwed mothers.
So it's a problem across the board.
I mean, how does that happen? How do we destroy our cities like that? And how will we ever have a functioning workforce, a literate workforce? We can't. And so I don't know what it means, Chuck. It doesn't spell anything positive, but what it does suggest is we need a massive flip of how we do things.
And does that begin in the grassroots movement with I don't even know where you begin with parents. I mean, that's changing the household structure, changing that mentality as a kid's going to school that they need to succeed in school, or is it can't be done by the government, because we see what the government does. You throw money at it, it's just throwing it into the big dumpster fire, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, the big problem is that people like Pritzker, people like Johnson, Lightfoot, their message is so powerful, and the media. I'll tell you, a big part of this is the media, which is great what you guys are doing. But the problem is that the victimology argument wins now. You know, they're victims. They can't be helped. You know, the bigotry of low expectations. We have to flip that and say, hey, you can succeed. I mean, if you look at reading, and I taught my kids how to read personally through Hooked on Phonics. I loved it. I sat down and I read with them. Kids are really smart.
Sure,
and you can take a third grader who can't read today. I promise me, you dedicate resources, families, volunteers, teachers, unions, I don't care who it is. You can get them to read. And so we need to change our whole model of being more inspirational, more demanding, and you can do it.
Right. Instead of
now
saying
you can
do it. As it sits on my desk.
That's what we just talked about that.
The great one, the Gipper. That's the mentality that just drives me crazy, because we see our tax dollars in Illinois just going through a garbage chute, and then you never see the end result, but you do see the end result. It ends up with 3 out of 100 kids being able to read and do math.
Yeah, and for naysayers, I always bring up Poland. Poland was destroyed. It was in rubbles. And they didn't say we can't do that, we're victims. They said we can do it, and they have.
You can see we've got a lot of information here. Wirepoints is where you can find them. Is it wirepoints.com or .org?
.org.
.org.
Not for profit.
Not for profit. Wirepoints.org is where you can find them. It's Ted Dabrowski. We're inside the square. We will be right back, and we're going to dive into this Chinese battery factory that the governor of Illinois has signed off on. What does that mean for the state of Illinois and its people? We'll find out inside the square.